The milk boycott, and Sanitary Davis was in the business to sell milk.
And when you stop that money from coming in, then they listen.
That way you got to put black driver for Sanitary Davis.
I work for the United States Postal Service. You would think that as a government organization that racism wouldn't enter into it, but it did. I was the first person of color to hold at least 2 different positions. I was postmaster in Grant, Michigan for a year. I was postmaster in South Haven and postmaster in Spring Lake. In addition to being the first supervisor to being a branch manager right here in Muskegon Heights. So that was my proudest accomplishment, was to be at the branch in the city where I grew up.
When I go to meetings, and if I hear somebody got a job over in the qualifications, I know fellas who had gone to college and who had training. I had that resume on my couch, so when I leave the meeting, I call them and tell them about this job opening.
We had a meeting, and the NAACP was going to pick a Ben Lowe, who's the top person with the United Way. And I was working for the United Way, and the NAACP group was supposed to ticket at 12 o'clock. And I was in with a fundraising for the United Way. I was a fundraiser. And I was with my people that I was working with. And the phone rang at 12 o'clock. And it was to my boss that the NAACP was picking Ben Lowe. And the man said, why are they picking Ben Lowe? He said, because he doesn't have any Negroes. And he said, why don't you have any Negroes? They said they didn't know. So what happens is, after that meeting, my boss called me in to his office and said, Sigrid, did you know that we're going to pick a Ben Lowe? I said, yes, sir. He said, why didn't you tell me? I said, because you're the enemy. He said, no, you didn't tell me that, Sigrid. I said, yes, I did, Mr. Sherman. He said, well, do you know the people involved in it? In the NAACP? I said, yes, I do. He said, you know the names of all the people? I said, yes, I do. He said, you want to give them to me? I said, I'm going to give them to you, but if anything happens to those people, there's a military group right outside the line. They're ready to come in here and help us with our fight. He said, that's a threat, Sigrid. I said, no, that's the truth. It would happen. He said, well, give us the name, what's going to happen here. So it was a meeting called with the NAACP. Those kids were afraid to pick. And I see them now, that they were brave to get in line. And they explained to them that they want to change in the community. The NAACP youth group, when they picketed Ben Lowe, they had people spitting on them and calling them bad names and stuff. NAACP was strong, and it's still strong. And I've learned to fight, because we know we have a group that will stick together and fight.
I just got out of the military, and I was working as a junior flashman, and I kind of liked that job. And I got a call from the Urban League and also from the NAACP that they had talked to Mr. Grossman at Grossman's department store about putting a black salesman in. And they wanted me to go down and interview, and I told them I didn't want that because I was happy with it being a plaster. So they called my boss. He came over and talked to me. He said, we don't do much plastering in the winter time. He said, now why don't you go ahead and talk to the Grossmans. I didn't realize that, you know, they were important to that at that time. So I went down and talked to Herman Grossman. And I decided to give it a try. And I was the first black salesman at Grossman's department store on first black on Western Avenue.
They were looking for people to get into job opportunities that were not available. And they always say, if you send me the right person, we'll hire them. I went to the bank. That was in 1962. Western Avenue was just flashing, really. And the bank was right in the middle of all of this. And I talked to the vice president, who was also on the Urban League board. And
he said, almost like kind of hush hush. Well, I've got to go to the board, but as far as I'm concerned, I want you to work. But I have to talk to them and see what they say and give you a call. I said, okay. So I went home and I don't know if it was like the next day or two, he calls me and tells me that I have the job. When I showed up for the job that morning, and that was during the time of typewriters then. Oh, everybody just going and the typewriters were just going. And when I walked in the door, everything just shut down.
And so I said, you know, I'm going to real estate. My daughter found the ad in the paper. They were looking for real estate salespeople. And so I called the first number and it didn't answer. I called the second number. And he said I had to come to his office and apply, you know, and talk about real estate. So I went to the office and he interviewed me. And he said, if somebody slammed the door in your face, what would you do? Because he knew what I was walking into. I said, I did not go to the door again and say, did you hear what I said? I had an appointment to show your house. Is there a problem? And he said, you do it like that? I said, what other way would I do it? I know what I'm facing, you know. So he said, I'm going to take a chance and hire you.
Dr. Howell's president, and he named me to be the chair of the housing committee. And you know, I was interested in doing that because some of my training comes with housing. But we're concerned about adequate housing.
For a lot of African Americans in Muskegon during the decades following World War II, housing was anything but adequate. Fairview homes, also known as the projects, were referred to as cardboard houses by its residents. People were living in rented boxcars. Those that could afford houses were limited by realtors and lenders restricting available land through illegal practices called steering and redlining.
After the war was over, they thought they were going to go back south, but they didn't.
I looked at this house and decided maybe it was a repossessed FHA home. And I decided I would at least try to get it. And I was working with a fellow that was a real estate salesman also. We went over and looked at it and we decided to buy it. I was living downtown at that time, but the Muskegon Federal Savings, which I had my home with down there, they wouldn't approve the loan for this building. So I was turned down by 3 companies. And through the Urban League and the NAACP, I was told about the Molly Brown. That was their neighbor for Molly Brown. And they said, once you've been turned down by 3 companies, you can finance that directly with FHA, directly with the government. So we went to Grand Rapids, it took about 15 minutes, and they approved it. So that's when I bought that house. But if it hadn't been for the NAACP and also the Urban League, I probably would have never got that house.
I had seen a house advertised in the paper, and it was exactly what I thought we wanted. And when I called, the realtor said to me, you don't want to see that house because the blocks are moving in that block. I'll show you a house on Beach Street that's just perfect for what you want. And I was so shocked, I couldn't even say anything. I just hung up.
Oak Terrace was a development that a person by the name of George Biden had put together. There was a covenant on that land up there. And the covenant said that there would be no people of color to live in Woodbury. George Biden, after he got in trouble, the land went back to the state. And so we were able to go to the state and request the land, and they granted it to us. And we had the money to the State Housing Development Authority to pay for it, and we did. And so we purchased the land. We built 102 units of townhouses and apartments in 1973.
It was hard because when you go into the hospital areas, they would come out and look at you when you try to show your property. They'd stay at home and watch the people coming through, and the atmosphere was bad. You know, my life was threatened. When I had my own office, my mother actually phoned me. Somebody said that with a degree, and my mother said she's not here, and you said to tell them we're gonna blow her brains out. When I came back to the office, my mother was crying and nervous. I said, "What's wrong with you, mother?" She said, "Somebody threatened your life, Cynthia, and I'm afraid for you." I said, "If they were going to kill me, they would have did. They're trying to scare me. And don't worry about another everything in your life." So I did have times that I felt, is this worth it? You know it? But it was worth it. Because of the NAACP, I would meet with my clients ahead of time and tell them how you present yourself to the banks. And he would say, go to Sigrid, because Sigrid knows that you don't get extra money when you just walk away with $9,000, you walk away with $20,000. That time that was some good money to help people get good houses all over this city.
In high school, I had this teacher, he taught English, and at the end of the first marking period, he gave me a D. And I went to him, I said, "Mr. So-and-so," I said, "I got all my papers. I did not deserve a D. Give me a D." He said, "I never had a colored kid before, and I didn't know what colored kids could do." And then from then on, he gave me A's. Now, I didn't deserve an A all the time either.
I was the first black school board member for the Muskegon Public Schools. I stayed with the school board for some 20 years. And I look to the NAACP for help for the things that they did to change better opportunities for others like ourselves in education and in the community as a whole.
Most of the black kids went to Muskegon Heights High School. It was predominantly white teachers too, and then John Sidnor became the superintendent of the school.
And the community loved him. If you start talking about education in Muskegon Heights, John Sidnor's name is going to come up.